Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Patrine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshakarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna
Prabhupada Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Jamanamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Welcome to all. Thank you very much for coming. Special welcome to Dana, who's new on the block. And we're at Chaitanya Caritamrta Adi Leela text 65. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ishwarer Avatar 18 Prakar. Angsha Avatar are Guna Avatar. Shaktyavesh Avatar Tritiya E Mata. Angsha Avatar Purush Matsyadika Yata. There are three categories of incarnations of Godhead: partial incarnations, qualitative incarnations, and empowered incarnations. The Purushas and Matsya are examples of partial incarnations. Om Jnana Timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Miditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vande Hang Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Shadvaitam Shavatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lolita Shri Vishakhan Vitamstra. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Gotrupyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this section of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta, Srila Kaviraj Goswami has been explaining the first verse of his book, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Isham Ishavatarakan Tat Prakashamscha Touch Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Sangakam. The author has offered his obeisances to all of these different tattvas. And now he's explaining them one by one. He's explained Guru Tattva. He's explained Isha Bhaktan, the devotees of the Lord, and Isha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now Isha Avatarakan, the avatars of the Lord, the descents. The avatar literally means one who descends. So he's now going to tell us about in brief, all of these are brief descriptions. He's going to tell us about the avatars of the Lord. Ishwaraya avatar 18 prakar. First he says there are 3 kinds of avatars. Later in the book, we'll find more different kinds of avatars under these headings, but we're starting off 3 different kinds. Anshavatar is the first. Anshavatar, Srila Prabhupada translates as partial incarnations. Ansha means a part. These are Srila Kaviraj Goswami will tell us who they are below. Purusha Matsyadika. Purusha means Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. The 3, they're called Purusha avatars. The avatars who are who make possible the cosmic creation. So they're Angsha. And Matsyadik. Matsya means the fish. So the fish incarnation, the tortoise incarnation, Lord Ramchandra, Lord Nrsingadev, these are all in the category of Angsha. And we'll find that these 2 categories, the Purushas and the Matsyadik, or the Leela avatars, are further divisions or categories of avatars. So Angsha avatar, they're part of Krishna, they're Krishna himself, and they're Krishna, but in a partial manifestation. So Angsha avatar are Guna avatar. Srila Prabhupada calls these Guna avatars qualitative incarnations, which can be a little mystifying, but we can trace it back. Srila Prabhupada calls the gunas, or the modes of nature, the qualities of nature. Guna can mean quality. So the qualitative incarnations are the incarnations who preside over the 3 qualities. That means Lord Vishnu, who presides over goodness, Lord Shiva, who presides over ignorance, and Lord Brahma, who presides over passion. So these are the qualitative, the Guna avatars. And then next comes the Shaktivesh, empowered incarnations. We'll hear more about them in the coming verse. Any comments or questions so far?
Question. I'm forgetting the name of the devotee who does the Atma Paradigm series.
Oh, Akandari Prabhu.
Yes. And I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but he talks about qualia, I think.
Yeah.
In that series. So I'm wondering if there's a relation. I was kind of distracting myself looking up what qualia meant to see if there was
Qualia has nothing to do with the qualities of nature.
Okay.
But it's interesting, since you brought it up, qualia are the qualities that make an experience an experience. We all have experiences. For example, we have the experience of seeing a blue sky, and maybe that fills us with happiness or some other response to it. But there's something that it's like to experience a blue sky. And that's something that it's like may differ for each of us. But I experience a blue sky, or I experience the taste of water, or I experience hunger. These are all experiences. Now, a computer can be programmed to report every hour, I'm hungry. Or it can, in response to a blue light or a red light, it can say, I see a blue light, I see a red light. But is the computer having an experience like ours? Most of us would say no. So these qualia, which have nothing to do really with the qualities of nature, these qualia or experiences are a real problem for the reductionists, for those who'd like to explain everything on a computer model and say that we just have neurons firing and dendrites and all the cerebral apparatus, and these are sufficient if we understood them deeply enough to explain consciousness. For them, qualia is a serious problem, and it leads into what one scientist has called the hard problem of consciousness. It's easy to explain how conscious beings manipulate objects or recognize objects, but how they experience, that's very different. And that doesn't, what's the word? It's a challenge, and it's so far an insurmountable challenge for the proponents of what's sometimes called hard artificial intelligence, hard AI, the idea that everything can be just explained by material means. So that's what we call a diversion. We've totally gone off topic, but it's since you brought up Akandati in the Atma paradigm, we really couldn't resist at least visiting briefly.
I understand what you're saying, that they really don't have anything to do with each other. I was looking at it more in an etymological sense, because quale means kinds, and so the gunas, there's it separates different. It separates material energies into different kinds of they have different qualities. So that's what I was just trying to make that connection, because it's the words are very similar.
I see, an English etymological connection. I'll leave that for another time. Let's see. Praveen has, and forgive me, but I will leave it to another time. Praveen has said, the experience which we have in this world are through the three qualities, but the living entity experiences the happiness and distress through these experiences. So the emotions which are experienced by the soul are also illusory. Illusory in the sense of temporary. Not that when I think I'm hungry, I'm not really hungry. Or when I think that I'm seeing the Empire State Building, I'm not really seeing the Empire State Building. Not illusory in that sense, but illusory in the sense that I won't always be seeing it, and it won't always be there to see. In that sense, asat, temporary. Okay. Anything else? Any other qualitative comments or questions? Okay, we move on. Brahma Vishnu Shiv Teen Gunavatare Goni Shakyavesh Shanakari Pritu Vyasamuni. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are qualitative incarnations. We've talked about them. Empowered incarnations are those like the Kumaras, King Prithu, and Mahamuni Vyas, the compiler of the Vedas. So Shakti Avesh, invested with Shakti or power. The Shakti Avesh avatars are basically jivas, living entities like us, who are invested with special power by the Lord. So Srila Vyasadeva had the power to present Vedic knowledge. Prithu Maharaj was invested with the power of rulership. Shanakadi, the four Kumaras, Shanaka and his brothers, they also are invested with transcendental knowledge. So these are called Shaktivesh avatars. Shaktivesh. They're not Vishnu, but they're invested, Lord Vishnu invests them with his power. Lord Buddha is also among the Shaktivesh avatars. He's invested with the power to arouse faith among the faithless, those who have no faith in Vedic literature, still gain faith in Lord Buddha. So he's also among the Shaktivesh avatars, and there are others. Any comments or questions about this? Is Srila Prabhupada?
Oh, sorry.
Is Srila, did you want to say something, Apurva Prabhu?
I wanted to understand more about Srila Prabhupada's position as a Shaktivesh avatar.
Hey, that's the same question that Saraswati
Okay.
asks. Is Srila Prabhupada Shaktivesh, empowered avatar too? This reference to Srila Prabhupada as Shaktivesh originated, I believe, with Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaj. He was the first, to my knowledge, who spoke of Srila Prabhupada that way. And if I remember, he specifically said he was empowered, invested with the power of Nityananda Prabhu. And of course, devotees have quite willingly signed on, they've accepted, and for good reason, that we see, what is that? Krishna Shakti Vidan Nahitar Pravartan. Elsewhere in Chaitanya Caritamrta, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi, without the power of Krishna, without Krishna Shakti, Tar Pravartan, it's not possible to spread the holy name in such a wonderful way. In one sense, anyone who has the power to do anything gets that power from Krishna. But when we see extraordinary power, then we can invoke this term Shaktivesh. Otherwise, all of our preachers have some power. Where have they gotten that power? It's coming from Krishna. But sometimes someone appears who has extraordinary power. There may be kings who are powerful, but they're not Prithu Maharaj. There may be sages who are great writers, but they're not Vyasadeva. There may be preachers, but they're not Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada has displayed extraordinary power. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Vibhuti Yoga chapter, Vibhuti means similarly, displaying the power of the Lord. There it's extended more broadly among fish, I'm among aquatics, I'm the shark, and so on. So we don't think that's a shark the shark is an incarnation, or the banyan tree is an ashwatha tree is an incarnation. But when we see extraordinary power especially for spreading Krishna consciousness, or carrying out the will of the Lord, then Shaktivesh. Is that okay? Okay. Question from Vijay Krishna. Because God incarnates in the material world, it could be said that he does it out of attachment, and due to the fact that he's the proprietor of all the creations. how can God be attached to what he himself categorizes as no better than a place full of miseries, where repeated birth and death take place? We have this passive voice here. It could be said that he appears out of attachment. That could be said by fools. Namam karmani limpanti name karma palespriha. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I'm not affected by any work, and I have nothing to aspire for as the results of work. We do something because we want the result. But Krishna says, Name karma, pales priha, iti mam yo vijanati karma birna sabhadyate. Even an ordinary person, if he simply knows this about Krishna, he's also freed from entanglement in karma. So Krishna's not like us. Avajananti mam muta manashim tanamashruta. Param pavam ajanata. Only those who don't know Krishna's transcendental nature think that he's an ordinary person or that he's attached. That mistake was made by Indra when Krishna came and took the Parijata tree from the heavenly planets. Then Indra thought that Krishna was stealing the tree because Krishna was attached to his wife, like an ordinary henpecked husband. Indra thought that because he's an ordinary, because he's attached to his wife. So Atmanvan Manyate Jagat. So Krishna's not attached. He can create millions of universes. Why should he be attached to this inferior energy? Even if he comes, Prabhupada gives the example. The governor sometimes visits the prison, not because he's feeling nostalgia for prison life or something like that. If Nelson Mandela visited some prisoners, it's not because he was feeling, I miss prison. Or Prabhupada gave the example that Mahatma Gandhi was for some time in prison. But that doesn't mean he was like an ordinary thief or murderer. When Mahatma Gandhi is in prison and when the ordinary thief is in prison, two different things are going on. So when Krishna comes to this material world, Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam, all of his birth and activities are all transcendental, and there's no asakta karma, asakta teshu karmasu. Krishna says, I create this material world, but asakta teshu karmasu. I'm not attached at all. Asakta. Yes. In the Gaudiya Sampradaya, Saraswati says, it was predicted a divine soul will spread the Sankirtan movement all over the world. Yes. Senapati. Senapati means like a commander, commander-in-chief. So yes, the prediction is there and fulfilled. Praveen says, we know that the Angsavatar and Gunavatar are counted, meaning we know it is these listed personalities who are in that category and no one else. But for Shaktivesh, is it that anyone bestowed extra power can become Shaktivesh? That is, there could be more than the list of specified names under Shaktivesh. There's actually more than specified names for every, for Leela avatars too, for that matter, because in the Bhagavatam it said, Asankhena, they're uncountable. No one can count how many there are. As for Shaktivesh, some are listed, and I take it from Srila Sridhar Maharaj's statement that an expert in the devotional science can detect that here's a Shaktivesh avatar. An expert. Otherwise, it's not just a name to be thrown around that, oh, Shaktivesh avatar. Everybody becomes, a cheap Shaktivesh avatar. If he, he opens 3 temples, he's Shaktivesh avatar. So, of course, you can do that. That's what happens with words. When you use them very loosely, they lose their meaning. They lose their meaning. They become so imprecise, so fuzzy, that they don't mean anything anymore, or it's hard to know what they mean. So best that words be used with care, with precision, so that they mean something. So if you were to apply Shaktivesh avatar to me, for example, then it wouldn't mean very much. You know, what Shakti have I shown? You know, I've edited a few books, I've caused a few controversies. That doesn't put one on the list. But when someone's uniquely spreads Lord Chaitanya's movement all over the world, and that too within 10 years, and powerfully, then how is it possible? Krishna Shakti Bina, not without special empowerment from Krishna. So then we feel justified in using such a high term, Shaktivesh avatar. So an expert in the spiritual science can do that. Yes. So we take it on the authority of Srila Sridhar Maharaj that Srila Prabhupada deserves that title, and we see it confirmed by practical demonstration also. Panchatattva says, can it be said that Krishna is attached to his parts and parcels who are in the material world? After all, he's concerned about their fallen condition. On the other hand, he says that he envies no one, nor is he partial to anyone. Yes, he says, Mami Vangshi Jiva Loke. I have my partial incarnations, but I also have my jiva portions. So they're also part of Krishna. They're also part of Krishna, and they're also dear to Krishna. They're also dear to Krishna. So yes, Krishna is attached, you could say. He feels compassion for the living beings, therefore he comes again and again for their welfare. Yes. Prabhin says, did Prabhupada comment about his being referred to as Jagat Guru? He didn't like the term. I don't have a reference for you, but it was well known during Srila Prabhupada's time that he considered the title to be cheap. Prabhupada comments, in fact, on it in his books, that people who haven't been outside of their town or district are honored as Jagat Guru. What kind of Jagat Guru? But everybody gets that title, Jagat Guru this, Jagat Guru that. So Srila Prabhupada didn't consider it a great title. He didn't ask to be called Jagat Guru, or what's the word? Exhibit great pleasure when he was called Jagat Guru. You can say it, it's not the end of the world. But when asked how we could call him, he gave this term, Prabhupada. One who's at the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Prabhu. Or one at whose feet there are many Prabhus, many devotees. Prabhupada, that was the title that he considered suitably a suitable honorific. And Jagat Guru is kind of, it's lost a lot of its sheen by being applied to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. All sorts of gurus become Jagat Guru. So why join that tribe? Panchatattva. Mayavadi sannyasis generally call themselves Jagat Guru, the spiritual master of the whole world. Many consider themselves worshipable by everyone, although they do not even go outside India or their own district. Out of his great magnanimity and humility, something, fragment. Anyway, we've got it. Madhya Lila 2572 from the purport. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada noted the sort of cheap use of Jagat Guru. It's implied here also that he's a legitimate Jagat Guru. What to speak of the district or India, he went everywhere. But still, he preferred this title. The Shankaracharyas are generally known as Jagat Guru. Kanjipuram Shankaracharya, Puri Shankaracharya, and so on. It is said, at the feet of a mother lies heaven, but at the feet of a guru lies Goloka Vrindavan and the permanent home of a disciple. Saraswati says, I hadn't heard that before, about at the feet of the mother lies heaven. Haridas says, in Prabhupada's poem on preaching to America, he referred to Sri Krishna as Jagat Guru. Yes, which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur translates as the center of gravity of the universe. Because Guru means heavy. So the center of gravity of the universe. Tulsi Priya, thank you for that, Haridas Prabhu.
I forgot my question, Maharaj. If I think of it later, I'll bring it up.
How about that? Another conditions. Okay. Anything else? No. So we've now covered these three verses, or not even three. Yes, these three verses covered the topic of avatar. And now, in the next verse, 68, Tat Prakashamsha Tat Shakti. So now Prakash, Tat Prakash will be described. Okay. Dvi Rupe Hoy Bhagavanir Prakash Eketa Prakash Hoy Arta Vilas. Dvi Rupe Hoy Bhagavanir Prakash. The manifestation, Prakash means manifestation, of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, is seen in two forms, Dvi Rupe. Eketa Prakash Hoy. One is called Prakash, one is called Vilas. The personality of Godhead exhibits himself in two kinds of forms, Prakash and Vilas. It's may confuse us just slightly that in the Bengali, the Lord has two kinds of Prakash. And one is Prakash, one is Vilas. But Prakash means manifestation. So one is called Prakash, one is called Vilas. Backtracking, by the way, on this term avatar, it's the word we use. It's a little, the word we use is incarnation, rather, which is a little pesky, because incarnation means, or etymologically means, embodied in flesh, which fits perfectly with Christian theology, where they think that the Word or the divine became flesh in the person of Jesus. But we don't think that way about the incarnations of Godhead. It's not that Krishna or Ram or the other avatars, Narayan, assume forms of flesh. Sachidananda Vigraha, their forms are always transcendental. But still we use the term because Prabhupada used it. Let's see, maybe I'll look at the chat box before we move on. Related to the compilation of the Vedas, which are the books meant for the less intelligent? Yes, the Puranas and the Itihasas are generally Sri Sudra Dvijabandhuna Shayina Shruti Gotra. The Smritis in general, in fact, are meant for those who are less qualified. The Shrutis, the Vedas, now there for the highly qualified. But in this age, who's qualified? Sri Sudra Dvijabandhuna, women, Shudras, and the friends of the Brahmins, meaning the so-called Brahmins, they're not fit to explore the Vedas. So for us, the Puranas and the Itihasas present the essence of the Vedas in a more suitable form. Okay. So now, the Lord appears in two forms, Prakash and Vilas, which the purport is now going to speak to. Supreme Lord expands his personal forms in two primary categories. The Prakash forms are manifested by Lord Krishna for his pastimes, and their features are exactly like his. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 queens in Dwarka, he did so in 16,000 Prakash expansions. That means every one of those 16,000 was identical with all the others. Similarly, during the Rasa dance, he expanded himself in identical Prakash forms to dance beside each and every gopi simultaneously. When the Lord manifests his Vilas expansions, however, they are all somewhat different in their bodily features. Lord Balaram is the first Vilas expansion of Lord Krishna, and the four-handed Narayan forms in Vaikuntha expand from Balaram. There's no difference between the bodily forms of Sri Krishna and Balaram, except that their bodily colors are different. Similarly, Sri Narayan in Vaikuntha has four hands, whereas Krishna has only two. The expansions of the Lord who manifest such bodily differences are known as Vilas Vigrahas. So that's the distinction between Prakash and Vilas. Prakash are Krishna's absolutely identical expansions, and the Vilas expansions are those that are a little different in some way. They're equally the personality of Godhead, but their features differ in some ways from those of Sri Krishna himself. So they're called vilas. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada calls them pastime forms, because vilas can mean pastimes. Any comments or questions here?
Yes, Maharaj.
Mhm.
I'm not very, I'm not expert in Sanskrit, but I've read Prabhupada has said he compares Krishna to an actor on a stage, and in
Compared which one?
he compares Krishna sometimes to an actor on a stage, and also Queen Kunti also she says, you are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. So my question is, this word vilas, somehow I have it in my head that it has to do, it's related to drama or theatrics. And so can we take it that Krishna, when in these expansions, he has his original form, and these expansions are also identical with him, but can we take it as if that he's taking on a role, and he has a different appearance, he manifests in a different way? Or should we take it that these different expansions, they are Krishna, they are different identities of Krishna? Does that make sense?
No.
In other words, I can put on a costume.
Taking it apart, first thing is that they're all different identities of Krishna.
Okay.
When Krishna appeared before Lord Brahma and manifested so many Narayans, after Brahma stole the cowherd boys, Brahma was seeing Krishna again with some fruit and yogurt in his hand. And while he was looking on, Krishna manifested innumerable forms of Vishnu. And the Brahma could understand that these were all Krishna. These were all, so they're all identical with Godhead. When Krishna, for the year before that, expanded himself as all the boys and calves and cows, they were all identical with the personality of Godhead, in distinction to the living entities who are one and different. Krishna, Achintya Shakti, Bheda Bhed Prakash. We're one and different with Krishna. We're one in quality, but different in the extent of our greatness. We're very tiny and Krishna is infinite. But these Prakash forms and Vilas forms are all Krishna. Therefore, the Brajvasis, who always felt more love for Krishna than even for their own sons, now felt equally affectionate to their sons, because they were all Krishna. And the cows and calves were equally attached, even the same way they were attached to Krishna. So they're all identical with Krishna. Now, Krishna appears in both forms as part of his dramatic pastimes. When he performs the rasa dance, the forms were all identical, but it's a great drama. But then he expands in other forms, Balaram, and from Balaram, so many. And yes, then there's wonderful dramas that the Lord performs. Matsya as Matsya, as Kurma, as Nrsimha, as Ram. Does that cover the territory of your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, let's say, to use your example of him, bewildering Lord Brahma, he appears as the cowherd boys, and there's a pastime going on, and those features are not of the cowherd boys are not the same as his. Could we say that that's a Vilas expansion? And then when he appears as Narayan before Lord Brahma, then it's a Prakash expansion?
No.
Okay.
The definition given here by Kaviraj Goswami, what's the distinction between Prakash and Vilas? The Vilas expansions look different.
Well, Well, that's what I was saying, because the cowherd boys look different.
Yes, so they're Vilas.
That's what I was saying.
Narayan also looks different from Krishna.
Okay, yeah, right.
So he's also Vilas. Balaram different, looks different from Krishna. So he's also Vilas. So all the forms in which Krishna expands himself that look different from his original feature are called Vilas. And the forms that are identical, which he explained, what's the word? He displays on certain occasions, the Rasa dance, his marriage to all those queens, identical. Or another example, it's not pointed to in Shastra as being Prakash, but seems to be when he was traveling with the sages and he got 2 invitations from Shrutadev and from Bahulashtra, a Brahmin and a king, 2 different invitations. So he became 2 and accepted both invitations. He went to both houses. And as far as I understand, there was no difference between those 2 forms. So this is Prakash. But then when he appears as Balaram, as Narayan, and so on, Ram and Shringa, then Vilas.
I have to ask one last thing though. When Mahaprabhu manifested his different identities, they all look different, but that's called a Mahaprakash.
Yeah. Well, again, you get into these, many different meanings of Prakash.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have, many different meanings of well, I gave the example in my book of block. A block is a little piece of wood that a kid plays with. A block is a part of it's the street between 2 corners. A block is something that obstructs you from thinking of something, and so on. So a block is a piece of, a chopper, a piece of wood, like a chopping block. So words can be used differently. Even here in this verse, we see that Kaviraj Goswami says that Krishna has 2 kinds of Prakash. One is called Prakash, one is called Vilas. Right. So even he right there is using Prakash in 2 different ways. One is the larger category, and then again as a subcategory. So I won't even venture to say what relationship Mahaprakash has with these things, except that yes, Lord Chaitanya. It appears that Lord Chaitanya does the same thing. He appears in the kirtan parties at the Rath Yatra, and he dances in all the different parties at the same time. So that appears to be an instance of identical manifestations. And then on other occasions, he appears differently, as you said, Mahaprakash, so he manifests himself in different features. Also that Sadbhuj Murti, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but in a different feature.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda Prabhu is not different from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but his appearance is different. Brajendra Nandana Jay, Shachi Shuta Hoilo She, Balaram, Hoilo Nitai. Saraswati says that this expansion business, scientists, would they call this cloning? I don't think so. I think they'd stay out of it if they knew what was good for them, or they'd stay out of it because they're not interested. There's something in English called popularized technicalities, where a technical term is used to mean something very different from what it means within its proper technical jurisdiction. Panchatattva says the word Mahaprakash refers to the Lord's pastime of displaying his opulence. The Lord manifested his opulences for Satprahar, or 21 hours. Yes. Hallelujah. I think it should be, I think it should be Prakash as spelled in the verse, but this is in the purport.
Yes, Gurudev, it says Parakas.
Parakash. Yeah, I think that's the typo. Prabeen says, apart from difference in bodily forms, the Vilas forms are also having different moods and choices. Balaram's quick to punish Rukmi where Krishna stayed silent. All Prakash forms would have stayed silent, yes. So, yeah, I thought about that too. Actually, Kaviraj Goswami and Srila Prabhupada just point to this one thing, that they look different. And the only difference between Krishna and Balaram is that Krishna is black and Balaram's white. Prabhupada says that on many occasions. But when we go deeper into it, we find that there are other differences also. Lord Balaram's older, Krishna is younger. Lord Balaram is sort of on board with the Kauravas, and Krishna is solidly with the Pandavas. Krishna wanted Subhadra to marry Arjuna, and Balaram was more for Duryodhana. So these differences are there, adding spice to Krishna's pastimes, that he's one person, and yet he appears in different features, sometimes even disagreeing with himself. So this is Krishna. Vijay Krishna says, if Krishna cannot be known in full by the ones who do have access to the literature meant for the less intelligent, in what measure this literature could be there, inspiring the reader to become enamored of God who is somewhat unknown. The question meandered a little bit. Let's see. If Krishna, first of all, no one knows Krishna in full. That's not possible. But whatever we hear from the literature can inspire us. Yes. That's the qualification of Srimad Bhagavatam, not that it enables us to understand everything about Krishna, because even Krishna doesn't know everything about himself. So that's not the point. It's not that the Vedic literature is meant to tell us everything and everything. But to some extent, even, again, coming to 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna enumerates or describes various opulences. Then at the end, he says, Attava bhagunaitena kim gatena tavarjana. What more can I say? Vistavyaham idam kritsnam ekam shena stitojuga. With a mere fraction of myself, I support the entire cosmic manifestation. Elsewhere, earlier when he was asked, please tell about your vibhutis. Pradhanyata Kuru Shrestha. Yes, I'll tell you about my vibhutis, but only the headlines. I won't tell you everything, because Nastyanto Vistarasya, there's no end to the extent of my opulences. So this is Krishna, unlimited in his opulences, unlimited in his incarnations, all of these categories, Gurun, unlimited gurus, Isha Bhaktan, unlimited devotees. The Lord himself is unlimited and appears in unlimited forms, Avataraka, and so on. well, this is Krishna. No one can draw a circle that encompasses everything about Krishna. Something we can understand. The Brahma says that you don't let others say that they understand Krishna. But as far as I'm concerned, even if one could crush the world to powder and then count how many particles there might be, or Prabhupada paraphrasing says, even if you could roll up the sky like your bedroll, still one would not be able to fully understand the extent of the glories of Krishna. So we're just trying to taste a little something, appreciate a little something about Krishna's unlimited glories as found here in Chaitanya Charitamrta.
And Maharaj,
Yeah.
Maharaj, and that little is enough for us to surrender, to go for full surrender?
Yes, why not? Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajante mam bhuta bhavan samavita. Just by understanding that Krishna is the source of everything, one becomes filled with ecstasy and wants to love Krishna. There's so much that will attract the soul to Krishna. Krishna's Atmanama. The Kumars became attracted just by smelling the tulsi offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. There's in so many ways, Krishna is attractive.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jai Krishna Prabhu. So we'll stop here. We're at the hour, whichever hour it might be for you, or half hour in India. And thank you all very much for taking part. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
The Lachua gang says, Hari Hari Bol.
Haribol Lachua Gang. Okay, we can stop here. Thank you again.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
Haribol.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Did you get my thank you? Yes.
Yes, we got it.
Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj Ki.
Jai.
Jai,
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Or Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.